Casey Farah, hi.
Hi, Jennifer Apple. How are you?
Oh, I'm alive. How is your life since forever?
It's great. I am alive plus one. Um,
Yeah. For anybody who does not know you, who are you today?
who I am today, I'm an artist. I'm a business owner. Um, I am a former many things, um, but former actress, dancer, singer, performer. Um, but I think I've always been an artist, and I think that even from the time I was really, really little, that's who I've always been. And so I think currently and in the past, that's how I would describe myself.
When you say artist for you, how do you define that?
It's almost the kind of the root of the tree with many, many branches that artist used to be um, it used to be defined differently in my life. I used to define artist as all of the kind of musical theater, uh, you know, the titles
Mhm.
that as an artist I was a performer and a singer but then I would also do photography and I would also paint a little. And so
Mhm.
art was something different to me years ago. And now my art is has leaned into the more tangible art where I had to wash paint off my hands before recording this and
Yeah.
had to lint roll, uh, sewing scraps and fuzz off of me because that's my art is now tangible art.
Yeah.
But I think that's the beauty of being an artist and leading an artistic life is that it can morph and it can shift, but you always know in your bones that you come back to the the artist that you are, depending on whatever medium you're in at that
Yeah.
chapter of your life.
Yeah, I'm excited to navigate that with you a little bit just because, we've known each other for I don't wanna date ourselves, but many, many years since we've,
Oh, we still look
shared
good, darling.
space. I know, we still look exactly the same, I think, just a little older.
My hair color is
You
totally
know,
different.
your
It's
hair is
fine.
different, my curls are now are falling apart, but, here we are.
We all are.
Um a little bit.
Mm,
And, back in that season of our lives, yeah, I knew you as a performer and to
sure.
have seen you and your growth in your artistry to what you're doing now in this more tangible artist sphere has been really fascinating to and beautiful to watch, and that you've allowed yourself to really
Thanks.
morph with the way in which your life needed to move and
Yeah.
embraced the seasons of it and the multifaceted parts of yourself in the artistry that you contain, and have. So for me, it has been really cool to see your ability to move with the artist title. And so I'm curious for yourself, just like a little bit of the background as to how you've, I'd say, begun to accept is really the word,
Sure.
the transition or this current title of yourself or being in the mediums that you're now playing
Hmm.
in, like the journey to like, oh, actually this is really where I'm
This
feeling
is
more
where I am
fulfilled.
now.
Mhm.
Hmm.
Yeah.
I It's interesting because, talking about how we met and when we met, I went to college and majored in musical theater.
Right.
Basically, I was a theater major and a dance major. And in that section of my life, that was everything. But if
Mhm.
you had asked me 5 years before I to went to went to college, that was not my that wasn't my path.
Mhm.
Um, I was a competitive figure skater. I was incredibly shy and I didn't know I could sing
Mhm.
because I poured all of myself into what I was passionate about. And at the time, those passions, it truly was figure skating.
Mhm.
Um, and even at 5'9", I was determined to be
Yeah.
like as good as I could be at what I was doing. Um, and my whole entire life got plot twisted. I was in a really severe car accident at the age of 16. Um, don't text and drive.
Mhm.
Tell your friends, and then tell them to wear their seatbelts because somebody ran a red light texting, and my life was saved basically by wearing a seatbelt.
Mhm.
So there could have been a lot more plot twists that came along with that. But the biggest one was that I was confined to a wheelchair for quite a while. I was on bed rest. And so all of my performing, I was doing like high school or community theater and skating all the time and taking dance classes, but anything physical suddenly was out of the question.
Mhm.
Um, and I had to learn inside myself and just in my day to day life. Oh my goodness, now what?
Yeah.
And that's a question that so many I've learned as I've gotten older, that not just actors or artists, but human beings say to themselves every single day, now what?
Mhm.
And as a teenager, to suddenly have this like huge life plot twist where it was like, you're going to be lucky if you walk again, but skating is out. Um, I, I that wasn't in the cards for me, and so I learned at a young age that a plot twist and a pivot isn't a bad thing. I'm not a huge believer in everything happens for a reason.
Okay.
You look at
Why?
the because there's a lot of things that don't. I think you can find reason in trauma, that maybe sometimes beautiful things come out of it, but sometimes there are just things that make no sense, and I don't see. I'm also speaking a couple years out from my mom dying of cancer at the age of 61.
Yeah.
Um, I don't see a beautiful reason in that,
Right.
but beautiful reasons, you can create them.
Mhm.
And I think being hit by a car at the age of 16, that wasn't that wasn't great, but I would have. I'm sure I probably would have lived an awesome life if that hadn't happened. But it did make me more grateful, and it did kind of push me to pursue the things that I'm passionate about and that I'm able to do when I can do them.
Yeah.
Um, and so I created the reasons. And I think that led me to say, okay, I can't figure skate. I can't become a professional figure skater or coach or choreographer. That was my plan.
Mhm.
But then it made me dive more deeply into doing theater, because that
Mhm.
was not really a backup plan. It was just something else in my life that I was passionate about and that I
Yeah.
loved and that was able to bring joy to other people, and a way to connect with others.
Mhm.
And so after pursuing that, I went full into theater and did it all through college. Got my equity card pretty soon after graduating, and worked as an equity actress for about a decade. Um,
Yeah.
and it it was fantastic. And I mean, with all of the ups and downs and the roller
Right.
coaster of what it's like to be an actor in New York and auditioning and traveling to perform and being injured on a 9-month contract and not knowing until you until you got off the ship that your foot was fractured.
Cute.
Um, Cute, adorable. Um,
Mhm.
you, I made my life my passion, and it didn't it didn't end with anything dramatic like a car accident or any big, tectonic plates of my life shifting so much that I was like,
Mhm.
I'm done. But I felt in me that theater was not my biggest passion anymore. And in a series of odd and kind of lucky events, I kind of made this decision in my life and in my head that in the fall winter of 2019, um, I had done an amazing contract and I loved the role. And as I was taking my final bow, it really felt like it was like an exhale, like, okay,
Wow.
this feels like a final bow. Um,
Wow.
and that was a couple months before COVID hit,
Wow.
um, when the entire community of actors and performers were completely sidelined.
Right.
And not just actors and performers, I mean, people all over the planet were saying, now what?
Mhm.
Um, but luckily I didn't feel theater ending and then question like, well, now what's my passion?
Mm.
For years it had been building, and um, I I leaned into the thing that I had been building, and now it turns out to be my full-time career.
Nice.
And it still is based in connecting with others and hopefully bringing joy to people all over the world, which I can do from the safety of my home, from
Mhm.
the, when the world is scary, which it always is, but
Yeah.
during COVID and during my mom's battle with cancer, uh, and just with all of the insanity that's happening in the world, to be able to sit in my studio and create and share with other people, it feels like a very natural progression of I was on stage sharing with my casts and with audiences for so many years. And then going backstage and working on my little projects that like
Yeah.
nobody but my dressing roommates saw.
Yeah.
But now my whole life has turned into still sharing with an audience. It's just different.
Mhm.
And so that plot twist, again, wasn't as dramatic as being smushed by a car, but it was a slow motion realization that just because I was pivoting didn't mean that I was ignoring everything I learned from that chapter of my life. It
Yeah.
was just time to grow in a different direction.
Yeah. I'm curious how you knew that it was the closure moment. Like, what in you was there something? I know you were saying there wasn't anything monumental, but
Sure.
what about it made you be like, you know what, this is actually it, though?
I
Because that's
I
a big
knew
thing. I mean,
it
you've been
is.
it, and to be able to accept that, I think there are many of us who go through the ups and downs of this career and definitely find ourselves in various times of our lives
Right.
where do I continue doing this?
Do I keep
And
going?
perhaps there's, like, the little
Mhm.
bit of nugget of, like, "Yes, I do, because I've invested all these resources and
Right.
therefore I'm too far in," or it's like, "No, I know that this is how this works, where there really is no consistency in it, and so I'm just in a lull right now, and I'm in a hard, deep, dark point, and, like, I'm gonna pivot in terms of my mental health, and I'm gonna find things to hold me over, and then eventually the tides will turn." But to make the actual shift to be like, "You know what? Bye." Is really big, and
It
so
was
I'm curious.
it was really big, and I think because I didn't shift my identity quickly,
Uh-huh.
it had been a slow burn, so it wasn't like I went from my whole life is theater and auditioning, and I love New York City, and I'm gonna live here forever, and Broadway or bust.
Mhm.
Um, which I had been that Casey years ago.
Right.
Um, but then after I feel like I over the years of performing and doing various different contracts, like I feel like nothing I did was a duplicate of an experience. I
Mhm.
kept wringing out the sponge of like, okay, I did this awesome thing. And then I did this not so awesome thing, but I got
Mhm.
this out of it. It braided into a life that now I'm living. I didn't know I'd be living it then, but I felt the tides shifting. So there was no halt of like Broadway or bust, this is my life forever, sudden shift to like no more theater. I work
Mhm.
for myself. My paycheck is what I make with my hands.
Mhm.
The shift wasn't so drastic.
Drastic. Yeah.
It overlapped, and I think I kind of I created it myself. I made that decision, but
Mhm.
I kind of foreshadowed it without realizing what was happening for years, because with being an actress and auditioning, and there's no auditions don't pay the bills,
Right.
and until you get a show that pays the bills, but as a human being living on the planet, need another job to
Mhm.
pay your bills. And I was really lucky that the jobs that I had while I was auditioning and in between performances, um, I I loved them. And
Mhm.
well, yeah, they were pretty tedious sometimes. I taught painting classes in Manhattan
Yeah.
for years. And I think what I learned from that was there's still an aspect of performance in it.
Performing, yeah.
There's I can still work with my body, even though it's my hands, not like, Grand Bot Miles over my head.
Mhm.
Um, and and then from teaching other people, I was teaching Van Gogh paintings and Picasso's and Warhols to
Yeah.
New York City's finest, and it was a paint and sip studio.
Obsessed.
Nobody was that good. But I did love it, and I got to get messy every day and then show up in an audition with like paint on my elbow, and
Mhm.
it felt like me.
Yeah.
That combination of like I'm an actress, but I am also
Yeah.
um, that I didn't focus. So I wasn't so tunnel visioned that the only thing I did was hold on to
What I'm
theater.
hearing is also like you and we've had this conversation on other episodes, with other people about
Mm,
creating the side hustle part of it
yeah.
in a way that doesn't drain you and
Yes.
finding something that actually in some ways fulfills you in a different part of yourself, and you found a
Huge.
something that was able to sustain yourself both emotionally and physically and financially in something that you were also really passionate about and good at. And so it
Right.
sounds like you really were able to give yourself that opportunity, which then, to ease into that pivot. It's not like you gave up, painting
No.
for 10 years. You were actually doing it
No.
on a daily
I
basis.
And that's what I mean, that it kind of it braided into the life I was already living.
Right.
And I think a big thing that helped me, it meant that theater didn't burn me out
Right.
because I was able to have other healthy outlets that
Yeah.
were not auditioning and taking seminars, and like my whole life didn't revolve around like booking that one gig.
Yeah. Mhm.
Um, and even still with I had my theater life. I had my I need to make money and I'm lucky I make it painting. But
Mhm.
then I also had passion projects.
Right.
So there was a like if one thing wasn't fulfilling me, I still had two other buckets to kind of
Mhm.
fill up with water. So I was if I was empty in one, the two others were still
Yeah.
in my life, and those things I didn't realize then, but I would design websites for friends. um, I did photography if people needed some headshots
Mhm.
that could tide them over before their next haircut or something, that like I
Yeah.
wasn't a professional, but like I got the job done. And
Mhm.
I was able to I was able to do things that filled my cup while helping other people, and didn't realize that 10 years down the road, that's now a huge part of my job.
Yeah.
Is my with my company, I run my own website, I design my own website, I do all my own product photography. I've filmed myself. I hate the fact that social media is such a big part of my life, but
Yeah.
my business would be nowhere without it.
Yeah.
So I've leaned into it in a way that still feels authentic to me. But
Mhm.
all of those I used to film videos on my roof in Astoria because I had no money, and I
Yeah.
was like, this is a free activity and it gets me moving, and it hones in my editing skills. Now that Not the dancing on the roof part, but the editing and the filming and
Yeah.
the keeping my brain creating.
Mhm.
I didn't know when I was 23, but that was something that now is a muscle that I had been creating over the past 10 years while I was an actress.
Yeah.
Um, but I was also other things. So when I
Yeah.
decided, hey, you know what? I I don't like my body being just like a shell of an injury anymore. I
Mm.
got I got really really injured. As I said before, I broke a whole bunch of bones in my foot, and don't trust doctors on cruise ships. If there's a tool to put in your tool belt, get a second opinion that's
Oh my
not a
God.
doctor on a cruise ship. He told me to send good vibes to my foot.
Unreal.
And I think I'm a pretty positive person. But
You're like, vibes
the
won't fix my
vibes did
fracture, but
not
thank you.
work. I fractured my heel bone and
Oh
my
my God.
sesamoid, which is your releve bones.
Unreal.
And I continued to perform on it for 7.5 months. So
Jeez.
that, not that like I can't take a little pain, but um, I I didn't want to walk around. That made me feel less of myself,
Yeah.
being injured all the time. I
Yeah.
felt less connected to myself being apart from the people that I loved. And when I was in my early 20s, um, I didn't have the connections that I did in my later 20s. I I didn't have a nephew that I wanted to just squeeze and be near all the
Yeah.
time. I didn't have, um, well, at the time I didn't have a husband, but I had somebody that was made me want to share my life, not just run from it
Yeah.
all the time. And that person then turned into my husband, which, worked out great.
Yay.
Um, but it didn't make me feel like I was giving up on my dreams because I had been living them.
Yeah.
And I realized that New York wasn't wasn't my home. It was my temporary place.
Hmm.
And I've lived a lot of places in my life, and each one has felt a little bit like home as I've experienced it. But after a while, it sounds really, trite and cheesy, but your home is not where you are. Your home is
Who you're
who
with
and
and your
who and what you have.
yeah.
And a lot of the time, even if I know how fortunate I am that I have a supportive husband and a job that I get to call all the shots. But I also know that if I had kept going down a road of not feeling like myself without my job, without my husband, I wouldn't have felt like me. So
Yeah.
no matter where I was, I wouldn't have felt home or
Yeah.
safe or free of pain. Um,
Yeah.
but also that kind of contentment of knowing that my time and energy was being spent on good things for others and good things for myself.
Yeah. I think you're naming a couple of things here in that, we often get so caught up in quote unquote the way we think it's supposed to be
Yeah,
and often ignore our gut impulses or signs or things telling us that perhaps this is the moment for shifting or
sure.
moving or changing, and pride sometimes gets in the way, or shame sometimes gets in the
Yeah.
way. And I think it's really wonderful that you were able to listen to yourself and recognize that nothing that you've done is a failure, and just because
Mm-mm.
you're pivoting doesn't negate all of the successes that you've had, and that it's truly just a new season of your life. And I think
Yeah.
it's really wonderful to name that as a reminder for so many of us
Hmm.
as we navigate the ups and downs of it.
Absolutely.
So thank you for sharing that. I'm curious to dive now into what you're doing, and to talk about the art that you're creating, and also I think to talk about what it means to be a business owner creating
Sure.
art
Yeah.
and using the performance part of yourself to share with others,
Hmm.
via social media and otherwise. Like, really just the overview of the artistry, the overview of creation, the overview of connection through what
Yeah.
you're doing now.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's where my years in theater have really helped. I mean, so much of what I do is because of my years of performing.
Yeah.
Um, that I'm so grateful for all of the like life lessons that theater threw me, because
Yeah.
it allowed me to then be brave enough
Mhm.
to walk into this new era of my life
Yeah.
without feeling um, like I wasn't set up well for it.
Mhm.
Half of
Well,
what
because
I've
it's all
done,
additive and cumulative. Like, we
it
forget
is,
that
it's
these things
cumulative.
exactly.
It absolutely is. And that's why I feel like there, I know we all feel it, but there should be no shame in transitioning from one phase of your life to another.
Mhm.
Um, a couple weeks ago, I was talking to my cousin's son, and he had zero clue that I he was like auditioning for the school play, and I was like,
Yeah.
"Oh, that's cool." And he had no clue that I ever did any of this. And it
Yeah.
was such a weird moment to be like, "Oh my god, that was a different me."
Mhm.
But to be so informed by that area of my life that it's not a surprise, it just
Mhm.
isn't what my day-to-day looks like anymore.
Yeah. So what
Um,
is the day to day?
my
And how did
day-to-day
you get
is I get to sit in this room and make a mess.
Yeah.
And but it didn't start that way. It started much smaller, and like I said before, it started backstage during shows.
Mhm.
Um, and that's how I knew that I could live this kind of like, I'm on stage and I'm performing, but I also really want to go backstage and like finish that illustration I was working on.
Mhm.
Um, because what I was doing on stage was making an impact, but also this like other version of me was backstage sharing a different type of art.
Right.
Um, and honestly, the illustrations took off, and it surprised me. But mostly the reason why I taught myself how to digitally illustrate is because you can't bring a set of paints into a dressing room with very fancy costumes. The costumers don't like that when you bring paint near their stuff.
Yeah.
So I bought myself a little tablet pen, and it was shitty, and but I learned, and then started sharing these illustrations, and eventually people started wanting to pay me for things.
Mhm.
It wasn't just me recreating a Van Gogh for a room full of, bachelorette parties. It was my own art starting to make a difference.
Yeah.
And so it really started with the illustrations, and that was during the 2016. And because there was so much negativity swirling about, I I couldn't do it. I couldn't lean into the negativity, even though it was all my brain would think about. And so
Mhm.
instead, I wanted to lean into lifting up instead of tearing down. And that sounds
Okay.
very like, oh, goody
Woo
two
woo.
shoes. Look at her
Yeah.
go. But my sanity couldn't do it if I didn't do something uh, productive. And
Mhm.
so I started drawing inspirational women that were faceless so that other people could see themselves in fill in the blank iconic woman
Yeah.
and see themselves in her, regardless of gender, age, skin color, um, background, ethnicity, anything. It was just, we needed to lift up because so much was terrible.
Mhm.
And I, as it was happening, I had no clue what I was doing, but they started getting these illustrations started getting shared, and then shared more, and then purchased more, and suddenly an illustration that I made was all over the world and was paying my bills while
Mhm.
I was auditioning. And I was like, but my head's not in this audition right now, because my head is in, I want to get these orders out so that people can hang them up in their classrooms.
Yeah.
It's like, I didn't have that on my bingo card. That's a
Mhm.
cool thing that's happening. Um, and then as soon as I kind of stuck my foot in that door, I opened it and tried my hand at different things, and some things worked. Other things took a while to catch on and then never did.
Mhm.
Um, but I've always tried to lean into the positivity and color uh, and the joy of things, rather than leaning into like, life is really, 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 really hard.
Yeah.
And I I'm very grateful to have gained an audience that um, that also wants to lean into the joy of things.
Yeah.
Um, and in that, whether it's been the illustrations of the inspirational women, um, and then last year in a plot twist that I didn't expect and didn't see coming, which if I feel like I'm, giving advice. I
Mhm.
don't know what happened. Like I'm not the one to come to for advice on like how to go viral
Yeah.
or like make a viral product with me. I don't know what it just happened like a lot of other life stuff does,
Mhm.
and then you either pivot with it or you lean away from it if you're like nope, not for me. But last April, one of my customers received a product that I made and basically just out of the goodness of their own heart made a video about they like went to my website that I designed myself.
Yes, you
Again,
did.
yes, learning how to make a website. Went to my website, read my bio, learned about me, and did a little like kind of product review on a series of children's toys that I made. And these had been years in the thought process, but they were basically born out of my losing my mom. And after years of making art out of sadness, which are the inspirational women that I wish that more people were just like, oh yeah, they're great.
Yeah.
We don't need to lead into this because everybody knows it. That was born out of frustration and sadness and in needing to hold on to something positive. And I felt the kind of burnout from constantly feeling like, come on, can we please lean into like support women, listen to women, what is happening? And then losing my mom, I my life got a lot more focused. Um,
Mhm.
it had to because just self-preservation.
Yeah.
It was my family and my support system and my friends that we just huddled emotionally. And in that huddle, you needed something to hold on to.
Yeah.
And when that thing that you want to hold on to, my mom, is not there, what do you do?
Right.
And I created something that was a piece of uh, nicknames that she had given me and comfort that I had watched my nephew. It was people that I loved that I wanted to bring them comfort. And so I was like, what's something that's innocent and needs love, even when they don't really
Mhm.
know how to ask for it? And those are
Mhm.
little kids. And
Yeah.
he had lost a grandmother, I had lost my mom, and um, needed somewhere to store that sadness or those happy memories. And I made a tangible thing to hug and to store things in.
I love it.
Um, and they're called punklings, and they have pockets, and you can hug them, you can store your secrets in there, you can store your little trinkets or whatever. And I made them. They were doing pretty well on sales and things. And then all of a sudden, this wonderful human being made a video, and in a matter of hours, I had thousands of sales,
Wild.
and those hours continued into days of thousands of
Crazy.
sales of
Yeah.
things that I made with my hands
Mhm.
that I had no warning, I mean, warning,
Yeah.
no sign that this was coming. I didn't have time to prepare. I didn't have the supplies,
Yeah.
but it was again, I guess the theme is plot twist. It was a plot
Mhm.
twist that I wasn't prepared for. You can't go to college for that.
Mhm.
Um, but the same as like, you walk out on stage and your scene partner's not there and you're like, I need to improvise because
Yeah.
there's a whole lot of people watching me, counting on me, and I don't know what to do. I
Yeah.
need to figure this out really quickly. And somehow I figured it out quickly and redid my website to say this is a wait list and they will be coming as soon as humanly possible. I am one person.
Yeah.
Um, and so, what was my full time job before of doing some illustrations, some painting, some sewing? has really turned into
A toy making business.
I I made stuffed animals. Like, who knew? I went to college for theater and dance,
Yeah.
and and
Yeah.
now I'm covered in fuzz
Yeah.
and upcycling suitcases
Yeah.
and like I you can't plan for this.
Yeah.
But if you're I didn't. I didn't know, at 17 when I was applying to colleges that it's like, you know what I'm going to do when I'm in my early 30s? I'm going to gestures at
Insert this.
everything.
Yeah.
What? No, but
Yeah.
if I had stayed on the track because I said that was the track,
Yeah.
my life would never be what it is.
Yeah.
And sometimes the tunnel vision can book you that Broadway show because you've been so focused and that's all you've been training for. It's all you know. So that's it.
Yeah.
And sometimes that works. And I'm thrilled when it does for people. I just
Yeah.
knew that that wasn't for me. And so listening to those, like, instead of saying like, I'm on a straight road and I'm going, my car started veering off an exit.
And
And I
you're
was
like, I
like,
guess this is a fun journey and
what's
I'm
over
going with
here?
it.
My GPS died. So I might as well go see
Exactly.
what's off this road.
Exactly.
And, but some of it's luck,
Mhm.
sure, because it often always is. Um, Luck that you happen to be the right height for the person that, their contract is up and you're the same height and you fit their costumes. And so, boom, you're in Wicked next.
Yeah.
But for me, it was luck that this customer made a video,
Mhm.
but it was the what do I do now? Okay, I guess I'm going to run with this.
Yeah.
And, and I think that has kind of helped guide me from I labeled myself as a figure skater and then I was a dancer and then it was like actually I like singing.
Mhm.
And I'm a very stubborn person. I don't think I'm not indecisive when it comes to things I'm passionate about. Indecisive when it comes to dinner. But I've known what I've wanted to do my entire life,
Yeah.
but it hasn't always been the same thing because I haven't always been the same thing.
I love that. That, yeah, you're embracing who you are in real
Mm-hmm.
time and allowing
Right.
yourself to morph with all of it. And I think just going back to what you were sharing about the Punkling story, and honestly, if I can, offer something about like hearing it reflected to me, is
Mm-hmm.
I imagine that when the flood of offerings, as in like people wanting to purchase these, came through,
Mm-hmm.
of course, like the overwhelm and the logistical, and like I'm one person, I don't have the time and the money
Uh-huh.
and the resources and the whatever, all the things. Holy cow, how does this happen? How do I get this all
Yeah.
done? And it happened to be born of a product that was still valued based. It was
Yeah.
still something that came from you being able to express yourself, to
Right.
communicate with others that you love, to relate to
Mm-hmm.
people who you are sharing with. The whole entire Punkling thing was born out of real emotional need, as opposed to just like, well, I need a cool product and I guess this is the thing. And that for
Yeah.
me is what the difference is, and like why you are such an artist in what you're doing, which,
Mm-hmm.
yes, it's a business also. That is what you're doing.
Sure.
And the
So is
craft,
theater. Yeah.
100%. Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
Everything that we're doing, if you're putting it in a commercial space and making money off of it, is a business.
Right.
And what's
Totally.
keeping you in the world that you are in as a true artist in it is the
Mm-hmm.
fact that you are accessing parts of yourself, the emotional parts, the creative parts of yourself,
Mm-hmm.
and then putting that through the crafts that you are then offering to others for payment.
Right.
And I think there's a huge difference. And for me, I love that that is your guidepost, and that is something that continues to guide you in all of the things that you do. And it's very clear, looking at the work that you put out, looking at the products that you have,
Thank you.
that that is something that you've always had, that it is something that comes out of you. The aesthetics of it are gorgeous, but it really does come from a place of like curiosity and creativity and
Right.
connection to others and
Connection
community in
to
that
other
way.
people.
Mhm.
And I think one of the biggest lessons that I've learned from creating something out of nothing
Yeah.
um, because these little buddies didn't exist before I thought them up, which is a really cool thing. But it also then becomes very intimidating when I'm the only one
Yeah.
who
Can do
who
it.
can make them and who can do it. And when you have an order queue that seems and is completely unattainable to finish in like a a business, a functioning business fashion, I
Yeah.
think one of the biggest things that I learned this past year was it's okay to ask for help.
Okay.
Um, and I that's where my stubbornness for a long time, I could feel it getting in my way
Yeah.
because I was the one that illustrated these characters. I was the one that put on all of my website like handmade by me. I can do this.
Yeah. There's probably pride
And
in that also, like the
and
pride of like,
there's a
I'm
big
the one
pride in,
who's able to do all of it. Yeah.
sure, but
Mhm.
also your pride doesn't eliminate it doesn't get eliminated because you've moved forward.
Yeah.
Like I, I can still, if that were true, then every show, every project that an actor has ever worked on, if you were proud of it and then the show ended, does that mean that you don't get to be proud of it anymore?
Right.
No. It's because it was that little nugget of time. You put it in the little box and you put that box on your shelf and you can get it whenever you want and
Yeah.
say, remember how proud I was because I did this thing.
Mhm.
And at a certain point with the punklings, I had sewn over 1,000 of them myself. I had
It's wild.
enlisted, like my husband was working full time. I had family coming to visit, and I was like, yeah, 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 great to see you. Pick up some scissors, and taught them. There were trusted cutters. There were trusted stuffers,
Yeah.
um, but no one could quality check them but me. And
Yeah.
so I asked for a mini version of help, and then realized I'm like, this is bigger than just like a craft at home with my family. I need help.
Yeah.
And I was proud of the work I had done, but then also really proud that I had reached a point
To know you could
to
ask.
know that I can
Yeah.
ask, and that
Mhm.
and I think knowing that for years I wasn't doing one woman shows, like
Yeah.
that wasn't my life. And even with a
Right.
one woman show, you have a director, you have a backstage crew, you have a
Yeah.
costumer, like there are other people that help.
Yeah.
And I realized after like I'm not that old, but my hands are like arthritic and I'm tired and I'm like breathing in fuzz all the time. I'm like,
Yeah.
and at that point we had learned that I was pregnant and I was like, I'm not gonna be able to reach my sewing machine at a certain
Yeah.
point because I'm gonna have to like bellies up here. But over the summer I was, it sounds like a made up moment, but it was not. I would be at my sewing machine sewing, and then my laptop was next to me and I would be researching sewing teams
Oh,
because
no.
I didn't feel like I had enough time to put the sewing machine down and do the research. I was doing it simultaneously.
Mhm.
That's how much I needed the help.
Yeah.
And I so much of sewing can feel so antiquated because it's been around forever, and there are a lot of companies that didn't align with, like you were saying, that didn't
The
align with
value.
my
Mhm.
values. And then I found a company that has like a super diverse, awesome group of uh, seams, like sewists and
Mhm.
creators that have their own designs and their own stuff going on, but they basically just help you get your work done.
Mm.
And I I love them. I am so grateful for them because they were my crew. I don't
Yeah.
have employees. It's just me.
Yeah.
But I didn't have, I in some shows that I did, I could never have gotten through a quick change without like
The team of
the
dressers.
the
Yeah.
team of dressers.
Yeah.
And we were like best friends. And that to me is some of the biggest beauty is what happens backstage.
Yeah.
And I feel like the team that I reached out to that helped me make, so they have machines and people that can
Yeah.
cut things 100 at a time instead of me and my husband at 1 in the morning, like, hey, how are you
Yeah.
doing? Um, that's what they do. And it's still made by hand. It's with a team of people who hold the same values as a human being on the planet that I do,
Mhm.
which was very important to me, that I just didn't want to ship it off to somebody who could get it done for cheap.
Right.
And then I still say it's handmade. No, I can't
Yeah.
do that. I still needed to stay true to who I was when I drew the little characters,
Yeah.
you know, in my home, in my brain, when I needed that comfort, and I needed to know that that comfort could help other people.
Yeah.
Um, we talk about what tools can help people,
Mhm.
is help,
Mhm.
is asking for help, even when it seems like you're too proud or too talented.
Yeah.
Um,
Or that
the
somehow asking for help is a sign of weakness. I
It's
think
not weakness.
there's exactly, like, it's actually the
Mm-mm.
complete opposite, where it's a sign of
I
strength to
think it's a sign of
know.
strength. Yeah.
Yeah, to know your capacity, to know what you
Hmm.
to know what you need, to know that other people actually have other skills to offer that you might not have, or
And it doesn't
time
take away
or
from you.
energy.
Yeah,
Exactly. It doesn't
absolutely.
negate. I think
No.
that is it's a misnomer that frankly we're taught, that like, oh,
Yeah.
well, in order to do the things you have to do it yourself. And it's like, yes, and let's also remember
Also.
that as artists, we are
Hmm.
choosing to be in dialogue with others. Like that is what it means, is
Yeah.
like whether or with, something else. Like it's like to be an artist is to engage with
It's
something.
connection. It's
Connection.
engagement with an audience, with your
Exactly.
fill in the blank. Yeah, it's about
Exactly.
connecting with
And
others.
even I love the example of like a solo show. It's like even in a solo show, it is still you are the person who is doing the thing, but it does not happen in a vacuum,
No.
like at all.
Mm-mm.
None of it does. And so just really
No.
the reminder, I love that, as, to ask for help only strengthens, and it can be
Yeah.
really hard to do so. And it could be a lot of unlearning of patterns
Of your
and a
own
lot of
Oh my god,
exactly,
yeah.
completely.
Absolutely. My stress didn't dissipate just when I asked for help. It, like you said, it took unlearning, and it took
Yeah.
a shift in.
Trust.
Uh-huh, that's a big
Yeah.
one.
Yeah.
A shift in my own stubbornness,
Mhm.
that just because someone's not doing it exactly as you are doing it doesn't mean it's wrong,
Yeah.
but the benefit is that it still gets done,
Yeah.
and the work is still good,
Yeah.
and that I could sleep at night.
Talk to me about the balance between the creating of the social media versus you actually
Mhm.
doing the art creation. Like, actual time frame.
Sure,
Like
sure.
like yeah.
It's interesting because in the very, very beginning of Rallybird, I was doing it simultaneously to my theater career,
Mhm.
and I did not want I didn't want my face shown in any of my Rallybird work,
Yeah.
because so much of what my career was unfortunately based on how I looked.
Yeah.
And walking into a room every day with a headshot and like, hey, am I skinny enough? Like,
Mhm.
my it was that was my resume, and
Yeah.
was what I looked like. And I didn't want Rallybird to be based on my looks or who was making it. I just wanted
Mhm.
the quality of what I was making to be good enough to stand on its own. So I really I did not lean into social media for a long time. And then suddenly when I realized that, like, that's a part it's a I should be proud of what I'm doing and stand behind
Mhm.
it, not use it as a disingenuous ploy to, like, look, I'm peppy, you should buy my stuff. Like,
Yeah.
I couldn't do that. The lie would show right through.
Mhm.
And as much of, as many acting classes as I took, I can't lie about,
Mhm.
uh, especially being on social media. I just don't, I can't fake it. And so
Mhm.
I think a lot of the success that I've had on social media comes from, I don't spend that much time curating it,
'Kay.
because, and this is probably a lesson that every content creator is like, stop, shut up, shut up, shut up. because I don't want anything that I do to come off as like, she doesn't believe in that, or that's fake,
Yeah.
or she's just doing that to like get sales or likes or whatever. I I could care less. But what I put out in the world, I want to be proud of the quality,
Mhm.
um, and I want to be proud of how I feel standing behind what I'm making, so
Yeah.
that nothing gets, because it's not just I'm not just making art that sits in my house. I'm making pieces that get shared and sold,
Mhm.
and then people use these things. They hang them
Mhm.
on walls. I paint hats. They put them on their head. That like
Mhm.
people are actually using them, and I think part of what I have leaned into as far as social media goes is sharing kind of the reality of what it's like to be an artist, to be a
Mhm.
person, um, to not really to have every video not perfectly made up and done up
Mhm.
and filtered and flawless, but to look like the little like house gremlin that I am, like packing orders, and like I look like I look like I'm tired and 8.5 months pregnant,
Yeah.
because that's real.
Mhm.
And if people don't want to see a real person making real things, then
Cup of tea.
I'm not their cup of tea, and that's okay.
Yeah.
Um,
Do you have,
but
like, equipment though for it? Like, are you using, like, a professional camera with some lighting, or are you just like, "You know what? Hey, hubby, can you just, like, record me while I have fluff on my nose?"
it's mostly I'm very lucky that our my studio is right down the hallway from my husband's studio.
Yeah.
So the only time really when he's amazing about documenting our real life. Like my
Okay.
pregnancy is like all these adorable pictures of me looking like a gremlin, but
Yeah.
like again, it's real. But the times that milestones that I've hit where like there were moments like when my video started going viral and I was getting all of these sales, he just turned on his camera and
Yeah.
filmed the reality of what that day was like.
Mhm.
And that to me is so much more important than like, hey, come quick. I put on a nice outfit and I made this
Right.
nice thing and I'm gonna Vanna White it for you.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Um, I I use my phone. One of the things that I do try, as professional as I try to make things look, I also don't want to come across as, like I said, I don't always feel like I need to be polished and perfect,
Mhm.
because that isn't my life. Um, it wasn't my life as an actress. Like I showed up to auditions wearing, I'd curl my hair from across the room because there was no room in front of the mirror.
Yeah.
And I would just put on the makeup that I was like, this looks okay.
Yeah.
And if the makeup and the perfect hair meant getting a job or not,
It wasn't for you.
wasn't the job for me.
Correct.
And I think for I've talked to other creators and other friends of mine that are trying to get into this world of how do I lean into social media? How do I like make it? How do I go viral? Um, I've attempted an attainable, I think, an attainable setup as far
Mhm.
as like actual gear and time. That like I have a ring light. Um,
Mhm.
I have a tripod, but I
Mhm.
film on my phone. I edit on a free app.
Which
Um,
one?
CapCut, baby.
Yeah.
Not sponsored. Um, but so for anybody that is trying to, if their passion is fill in the blank, beading
Mhm.
bracelets, they don't feel that they have to go out and buy a whole like lighting setup and like professional cameras, and suddenly their income from whatever they've made selling their beaded bracelets is blown on a video that only gets 800 views.
Right.
It's like that is so crushing.
Yeah.
And so instead, just keep making stuff. That we live in a world right now where musicians are, putting songs on Spotify because they have a home recording studio,
Yeah.
and suddenly they're viral all over the world because of a song they made in their bedroom. That
Yeah.
wasn't a thing that we could do as kids. We were still
Yeah.
singing into those like echoey microphones thinking that
Oh
like
my God.
this'll do it. But like there's there's so many opportunities for people to be creative, whether that's if you're not getting hired to perform on stage or film or whatever it is. I haven't performed now in years.
Hmm.
Um, Fall of 2019 was my last equity contract. I feel just because of a series of videos that I make and just kind of constantly having to be a little bit on as
Hmm.
the creator of Rallybird, I still feel like I still feel like I have an audience, but I wouldn't say I'm performing.
Yeah.
And that feels really good to
Mm.
not have a what I was worried about is having like actress Casey and then Rallybird Casey. And I hate
Hmm.
referring to myself in the third person, but it makes sense. But I I think it having that natural just being myself. And maybe
Hmm.
that doesn't work for some people. Maybe they really need that persona to turn on their ring light and hit record and be somebody else. And if
Yeah.
that works for them,
Go for it.
amazing.
Yeah.
Go for it. Lean into it because it still is creating something.
Yeah.
And if something in your bones and in your life want you feel pulled to create, just because it's not what you set out and said at 17, hey, I'm going to go do this. I'm a
Yeah.
failure if I don't.
Yeah.
Absolutely not. That will set you back more than any job you didn't get is that mindset.
Yeah.
And I think learning how to plot twist, whether it's getting smushed by a car, whether it's a global pandemic, or just knowing in your bones that you're like, I'm done.
Yeah.
And I think I've been done for a while. You
Yeah.
pivoting, twisting, somersaulting into whatever new version of yourself you are is not failure.
Correct.
It's progress.
I love that. I love that. Um, for anybody who wants to check out your stuff, who wants to potentially commission you for some dope ass art, who wants to ask further questions, do all the things, where within your
Yeah.
boundaries is the best way for people to find you?
Uh, I love that. Come at me, everybody. Like I said, I don't think I can help you go viral because I don't know how it happened, but I'll
Yeah.
help you when and if it happens. I'm Rally Bird brand on all of the things. Rally like woohoo, Rally, bird like a bird, and brand like a brand, and that's on Instagram, TikTok, Facebook. You can email me, rallybirdbrand@gmail.com. Um, and that's the same for my website um, and my Etsy shop. It's Rallybird brand on all the things.
Amazing. I'm so grateful to have had you in this space. I like wanted to ask more questions about like specific art and the things that you make, like your boxes and also FYI, like I found so I had purchased one of the inspirational women masks from
Hmm.
Casey during the pandemic. I found it
Oh
in my like
yeah,
bag somewhere when I was working, like just like stuff that I just wanted to ask
yeah,
more of it, but we don't have time because time is a luxury. And I'm just so grateful that you've given the time just to even conceptually talk about it. And it's really wonderful to
sure.
see how you've morphed and grown as a human being from when we were so much younger.
I was
And
blonder and less covered in
yeah,
paint back then.
listen, I was still a brunette, but I still had thoughts. And it's really cool to see, grown up versions of us. And I'm really
Yeah,
excited for you as you venture into this next chapter of being a mom and
thank
how I
you.
imagine and know for a fact it's going to continue to change the way you relate to the art that you make and the business that you have also. And I'm excited for that new chapter to continue to be informed by that. And I'm really grateful to have been in the space with you. So thank you for coming
Thank
on
you.
here and sharing with us.
And thank you for, one of the first things that, having the privilege of knowing you for so many years, one of the first things that I knew about you was you had this incredible singing voice,
Oh,
and it
thank
would
you.
like just floor people.
Mm.
And I remember listening to you singing and just being like, "Oh my god, this girl is just she's on a different level."
Oh, thank
And
you.
watching you through all of these years navigate life and just plot twists of being a
Mhm.
person, of being an artist, of just being a human being, um, in a cool symbolic way, you are still using your voice
Oh, thank you.
in beautiful ways that are still maybe in front of an audience singing,
Mhm.
but also in this space too, using your voice to uplift and empower and encourage other people that
Oh, I appreciate it.
I'm happy to be a part of it and proud to know
Oh, Casey. Oh, so many virtual little hugs
you.
over here.
So many
Um,
hugs.
so many hugs. Thank you so much for being in this space, and thank you for your
You're
kind words. That, like,
welcome.
really, really means a lot.
Thanks for having me.